Hello, welcome to Bordeaux. These are very exciting times here as we discover, taste more and more of the wines from the new 2022 vintage. We're confronted with weather change for several years now, and 2022 was no exception. With a very mild winter, we were faced with very dry, very warm, going to extreme heat throughout the season. This had as consequence a very early harvest. For the whites it started mid-August, and for the reds it was the first days of September. And it also resulted with the drought and lack of rain in a very small quantity. And we're about 10–11% down on a normal vintage. The result in the wines is quite extraordinary. We have whites that are fresh, that are crispy, that are expressive. We have roses full of flavour, a nice light colour, and the reds that are absolutely extraordinary, showing a lot of depth, lovely round silky tannins and a lot of fruit. And these are absolutely delightful wines, and we look forward to showing them to you. These extreme weather conditions with this drought and especially very high temperatures led to some worry. And it's a very pleasant surprise to see how fresh those wines generated by the 22 vintage are. And the technicians, with hindsight now, are wondering, how do we make such exciting wines in such extreme weather conditions? The answer seems to lie in the fact that the vine actually adapted to the drought and to the high temperatures, because the whole phenomenon started very early, starting in February, where temperatures were higher than average, and rainfall was lower systematically every month except for June, which was a little higher. That was actually beneficial. And so the vine adapted to that drought, the lack of water and excessive heat, and managed to adapt and produce this great fruit. Of course, this is very encouraging for Bordeaux. We've been confronted with the consequences of weather change for some years now. Very difficult to combat extreme and violent episodes such as hailstorms. But when it's that progressive and the vine is able to adapt, then it's very reassuring for the future, especially for the Merlot grape variety. We're not, of course, just hoping that the vineyard will adapt. An awful lot of work is undertaken to endeavour to help the vineyard and cultivate the vineyard in a way that helps it adapt to these new weather conditions. Canopy management is one thing. 20 years ago we were trying to increase the surface of the foliage to increase photosynthesis and increase the vine's capacity to ripen the grapes. Now we're reducing canopy size. Of course, everything that we used to do in terms of de-leafing is much less engaged now. We like to keep the leaves to protect the grapes from excessive sun rays. Delaying pruning is another technique that's used, and that helps us combat early budding and hope that then we'll be out of reach of late frosts. Agroforestry is developing massively in Bordeaux, and all these new experiments, new techniques that progressively are growing in usage. On a longer term basis, a lot of research is undertaken here locally in Bordeaux to identify maybe new grape varieties to be better suited to extreme heat, to extreme drought, to producing less sugar and less alcohol. This is a program that's now been undertaken for 20 years and producing its first results. It's identifying those grape varieties that do have interesting characteristics to adapt to climate change. Then it's also adapting the regulation. And we have the Bordeaux Supérieur that has now integrated in its rule book 7 new grape varieties that can be used to produce AOC Bordeaux wines. Of course, the UK is a very important market for Bordeaux wines. We've been exporting Bordeaux wines to the UK for almost 1,000 years. And today it still remains the 3rd largest market in terms of value and the 5th market in terms of volume. 2022 showed a decrease in volume of Bordeaux wine exported to the UK by 8%, but an increase in value by 9%, showing this upward trend, how the consumer is trading up and seeking higher quality wines. We are seeing that it is those struts of wine sold at more than €4.50 out of Bordeaux, ex-cellar price, that are gaining in volume, and entry-level wines that are actually decreasing. The UK is a strategic market for the future of Bordeaux, and we watch, we observe the trends, the consumer trends in the UK, confident that with a new offer of Bordeaux wines, we are perfectly suited to respond and answer to those new trends in the UK wine market. These new trends, Wine Intelligence Service that carried out a survey in 2022 shows the trends of the UK consumer. Of course, grape varieties remain a key point in identifying and choosing a wine. Merlot and Sauvignon are the preferred grape varieties of the UK wine drinker, and it so happens that here in Bordeaux we're essentially producing wines made with the Merlot grape variety for the red and Sauvignon for the white. Up to us to make sure that the consumer understands that our wines are based with Merlot. And we also have more and more growers who are producing single variety wines that can be clearly identified on the bottle and respond to that trend, that characteristic of the UK market. Another trend is trading up. The UK consumer, as it is also happening in other countries, is consuming less in volume but better in quality, and that is exactly the trend that was reflected in our exports value, where value is up and volume is down. The survey also shows that 94% of UK consumers know Bordeaux, have heard of it. So there's a high level of confidence in Bordeaux wines. And of course that is a key factor for us to continue building on the UK market. Then out of this Wine Intelligence Service, we tried to extract what is essential is the trends of the younger generation. And we focus on the under 35s. It turns out that the under 35s drink less regularly, are also less affluent, yet spend more per bottle. The under 35 are premiumizing their wine consumption. The other thing is they're less knowledgeable about wine, and so they need reassurance, they need guidance, they need to be able to identify key factors from the wine before they actually drink it. And this is something we're engaged on, giving confidence, giving guidance to the consumer. Younger generation, again less than 35 years of age, are also much more engaged in sustainability, and this is a key factor for them in their choice of wine, I assume other products too. This fits in exactly with Bordeaux's preoccupation. For 20 years now we've been measuring our carbon footprint, engaging in converting the whole of the Bordeaux vineyard. Today, 75% of the vineyard area is covered by an environmental certification. So 75%, we're delighted with that performance, but of course the objective is to bring that to a full 100% in the near future, showing that Bordeaux is fully engaged in reducing carbon footprint, developing biodiversity and obtaining these environmental certifications throughout. Again, this very important younger generation segment it has been the focus of our study. It shows that the under 35s has a very good and even a better perception of Bordeaux wine than average. They actually choose Bordeaux wines more often than the average UK wine consumer and intends to buy more in the future. These are key points, key factors that we want to build on to increase the presence of Bordeaux wines on the UK market. A very exciting point about the under 35s is that they have a better perception, better image of Bordeaux wines than the average UK wine drinker. The under 35s already drink more Bordeaux wine than the average wine consumer and intend to drink more Bordeaux wines in the future than the average UK wine drinker. So all these are key factors that we intend to capitalise on, build on to increase the visibility, the presence of Bordeaux wines on the UK market. So we've identified fantastic potential on the UK market, and this is how Bordeaux is adapting its offer to the UK market, but also to other markets. We're seeing a whole new diversity of profiles emerging here in Bordeaux, with young vine growers and winemakers who are producing wines that are adapted contemporary wine drinking habits. In that, it means more fruit, usually, less tannins, soft tannins, nice freshness, wines sometimes without added sulfur, as that is a trend. Wines that are designed also to be drunk cool, that can be iced. Different profiles coming from different growers and the capacity to adjust to every single wine drinking opportunity that one is faced with. The Bordeaux wine offer is evolving tremendously. Of course, Bordeaux is known for its red wines, but also a great array of fantastic white wines, rosé wines more and more, sparkling with our Crémant de Bordeaux. Production has tripled over the last 10 years and growing in popularity. Red wines, we're seeing the emergence of a new style of red wines, focused on freshness, fruitiness, softness, silkiness, as more and more consumers are drinking red wine from Bordeaux out of meal times. And of course, if you're drinking wine out of meal times, you want different characteristics for wine that will go with a meal and probably more structured with more depth. So we're also having a wide array in changes in winemaking techniques to adapt to contemporary wine drinking opportunities and occasions. We're seeing a whole new generation of vine growers and winemakers who are inspiring with new wine profiles here in Bordeaux. Of course, that applies to the reds, but also the whites, delightful whites, and more areas. We're seeing Bordeaux whites produced in the Médoc. We're seeing the Sauterne that produces delightful sweet wines, but also diversifying now into dry white wines. Rosé wines, great popularity of rosé wines, and we're seeing more and more growers specializing in the production of rosé wines that have to be very fruity, very expressive, but very delicate, very light, and of course, new style of red wines. These new growers are not only producing all these different styles of wines, they're also communicating about it, and they're much more active on social media, on the internet, on networks. And we'll seek to amplify that communication to give greater visibility to all their efforts. All these new growers are very keen to welcome visitors on their property, to show their work, to demonstrate their philosophy, and to let the visitor discover their wines, these new profiles. So everyone is very, very welcome to come to Bordeaux, visit the vineyards, and have an encounter with these winemakers.